Shadow of What Was Lost by James Islington. This book is highly touted by a lot of people to be similar to Wheel of Time, which is very high praise and something that if you're going to make the claim of, you need to know the person you're recommending the book to is going to have high standards going forward. And does this book kind of fulfill that? No. This is the first book in a series called Memories Found, and it does create a world that is interesting, and I am going to continue reading these books. But just to anyone who's making that comparison, you're setting high standards that this book cannot live up to because it's only the first book and the author is not as experienced and the author does not execute this series and this world building as well. It's still good. It's just not great. It can become great. I'm absolutely open to that. But this first book especially was filled with a lot of problems that I'm going to get into. My first thing here is just going to be a bit of a rant and tangent that really bothers me that normally you don't see in books that are as good as this, but this author certainly had this problem where consequences that aren't related to the plot don't affect the characters. And what I mean by that, and my beautiful illustration behind me demonstrates, is just as one example, minor spoilers, there's a scene where two of our main characters are in a room, some people try to kill them, those people die, and then our two main characters chill in the room with dead bodies for presumably hours and are fine with it. They've never experienced this level of violence before, but they're just like, whatever, it's no big deal, they're just dead bodies. And someone comes in later and meets the two characters to take them away and sees the dead bodies, and clearly no attempt to hide them or do anything besides just have these dead guys in the room with them has been made. They don't put them in the beds, try to make them go to sleep or anything. There's just these kids who are not jaded or concerned or in any way bothered by these dead guys at their feet, because it's not related to the plot, and it just kind of sets up something later on. And because it sets up something later on, it doesn't need to matter now, so the character responses to what happened don't need to matter. And that's a real problem. That is a glaring issue, and there's several instances of things like this throughout the book. And it really bothers me to have these guys, because it ruins the tone for me internally of how these characters think. I like to really judge how characters respond to events as a way to develop them as a character. And if you have two of your main characters witness murder for the first time, and their response is like, oh, it's no big deal, there's just dead bodies in my feet, and it's fine, let's just chill here and wait to leave, and not be worried about being caught with dead bodies or anything like that, then it's going to really hurt the way you're developing this character. Authors need to carefully consider what their character's response is to any event that would be considered extreme or abnormal like this, like having people die in front of you for the first time, or at least the first time the reader is exposed to them dying in front of you. Clearly show us what they are thinking when they see this, please. That being said, there were some other real issues with A Shadow of What Was Lost. The tropes are at an all-time high, to the point where there's an evil army that's coming and gonna be a thing and constantly referenced and never developed in a meaningful way. It's just a plot trope and a way to build tension that does not land at all. A whole lot more character tropes are there. That being said, it is a kind of fresh take on these tropes just because it's more of a modern writer, and the way he handles these characters who are those things is a little different, but you can still judge a character real fast just because you've seen it before again and again. The swindlers are swindly, the scoundrels are scoundrelly, and it's no one's going to really surprise you from point A to B. The plot twists are kind of projected way too far back and way too clearly. If you are 2/3 into this book, you can judge the last third of it almost entirely. And I'm seeming like I'm being really harsh. There are some very good aspects to this book. The characters overall are engaging, they are fun to follow, and I enjoy watching them develop because there is good development from the beginning to the end, but none of it's that unpredictable. No one surprised me. The world they're in is interesting. It is well developed. It feels pretty real, not extraordinarily so, but on an above average level. And the author clearly put a lot of time and effort into fleshing out how each culture, how each people, and each society is going to behave. And that's something I respect and like a lot. The execution of that, though, still at times kind of feels ham-fisted. Early on in the book, I had a high hope because it seemed like some of the bad guys might be in a more gray area than your typical good and evil, but unfortunately almost everyone is eventually slotted into the good or evil, or at least it's very obvious to tell where they'll be slotted in later. The author doesn't seem to have the desire to keep people maybe in a moral gray area so that the reader has to question who they really back. What I will say about this book, and I think this series itself has a whole lot of potential, is that this book set up an interesting world and was a good initiating point for the series to take off from. But I'm hoping as time goes on and this series develops, the author's willing to take more risks, to explore his options a little more, and to maybe throw some real curveballs to the reader that will change the dynamic of this world that's been established and make us question who we have to back. Because if the end of your first book, if I already know who exactly I'm going to be following until the very end, that's kind of lame. I mean, I don't want to sit here and just know, all right, this is the guy I'm going to be behind. This is the person that they're going to go up against. And in book 3 or 4, they're going to die, and there's going to be someone else they have to go after, the next big guy. It's kind of just tiring, and maybe that's just because I've been reading too much fantasy recently, but I'm just seeing this same pattern emerge, and I think this book is just extra guilty of this pattern. It's a good setup to something that could be really good if the author's willing to take some real left hooks out of here and just turn things around in a pretty drastic way. But as of just reading the first book, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it'll be another trope-filled, well-written fantasy series that you can predict and has some unique elements to its world, but is never really going to wow you in this is an all-new direction or an all-new feel that you've never experienced going into a fantasy series. If you haven't noticed, I've kind of stopped grading each individual category of the books I review. To me, that just kind of felt ridiculous. And I've talked to some people, and I'm pretty much of the opinion now, just listen to what I say, and you'll understand what I'm saying, going for. I'm not feeling it anymore. I like to just have more what I say be the content of my review and what people look for. And I don't want my audience to just look for some numbers, and maybe an overall number's okay, but you guys understand. Maybe I'm kind of sounding pretentious here, but to me, it is an important distinction, because a very flat scale of 1 to 10 can't really give you the depth that reviewing something as beautiful and creative as this book can be. And I hope that the positive aspects still come through to you, that there is a ton of potential and there is some really firm base here. I'd like to think of this book as a concrete foundation. There's nothing beautiful yet, but it's stable, it's well built, and it certainly has the potential to turn into something great built on top of it. And that's going to be my actual rating for Shadow of What Was Lost. It's going to be a concrete foundation out of 10. I hope that that makes sense for y'all. And the author certainly has some very good abilities and some really good skill coming forward, and I'm excited to see what he does next. I would not recommend this series to anybody, though, until I know where these next books are going to end up going. That is my thoughts on The Shadow of What Was Lost. My to-do list is still about, I think it's pushing 50 books deep now, so there's going to be a whole lot coming down the road. I am working a full-time job now, so I'm trying to still get these videos out and put the same level of effort in. It's just that during the week, I can't really do that as much, but on the weekend, you'll probably get more videos from me because I have a little bit of time during the early morning before I go out in the afternoon and night to maybe crank one of these out. I'll never do 2 videos a day, though. I don't want to spam you guys. I just want to have a good flow of content on the weekend. And that's all I have to say today. I hope you all enjoyed this review. Please like and subscribe if you have not already, and have a great day. Peace.